Hi, Cassie.
Hi.
This is so fun because Cassie and I speak every week during our sessions. Last week and the week before, you were saying how you wanted to work on really expressing and articulating more of your experience for yourself, for others, for clarity, and a lot of what we've worked on a lot of things that we'll get to talk about, but just the power of words and clearly articulating and like how that propels us into whatever is coming. And so we said, okay, well, let's just do it on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I know we've been working on like articulating things, and so I'm really excited to connect today and just to see what this brings and what we can both share today. It's been fun working on articulating and seeing all of the magic behind that, and also just feeling that in my body, like articulating that and feeling the power of my words and seeing it like unfold. Yeah, I'm excited to
Right.
connect today.
And yeah, the embodied experience. So I was just watching a video that Cassie sent to me, and I'm going to add it to the end of this show. So listen all the way through, but listen to the show first so that you can have context. And then I'll add a video at the end that Cassie shared of a practice that I initially taught her. And it's of her doing it and showing how to really embody, in this case, self-love. And it's such a beautiful video. I was like tearing up watching you do it because you can just see the emotion and you can see the self-love like really settling in as you're doing this practice in real time. And so I'll add that to the end of this show for people and show them how to find that. But about 2 weeks ago, we were having a session. So by the way, everyone, and I will have already done an intro by the time people get to this part, but Cassie is one of my private clients, and I take just a few private clients at a time. And so we get to work together in this really deep, beautiful, transformative, intimate way. And so 2 weeks ago, we were having a full session. And what was the question I actually asked you? Do you remember the question that started that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't remember the exact question. I think we were talking about articulating stuff, and you just said, "Oh, well, why, maybe you should
oh, I remember.
articulate how the progress you've made or the
Yeah,
growth that you've made over the last, 7 months we've been working together."
right.
It
And
was something along those lines.
it was a lot about God and your connection to God. And this is where I think it's beautiful is like how your connection to God has trickled in to all these different categories of life. And so that's something I was just thinking about. I was driving the other day and I had this moment of like, okay, I'm doing this podcast called What is God? And the primary question is like, what and where is God? And what does it have to do with me? But really, it's a podcast about all of the life coachy things, right? It's about health, it's about wealth, it's about business, it's about family, it's about relationships, because it's how does our connection with God trickle in and affect how we feel about our body and our self-image and how our relationship is going with our friends and our husband and our sister and our mother. And like we've
Mm,
talked about all of these things in our business, and yourself as a leader, yourself as a business owner, yourself as a creative, as an artist, as a spiritual woman, as a mother, like all of these things. And so and even health and even digestion and just like all the different
mm,
categories. And we think, should I listen to a podcast about health? Should I listen to a podcast about finances? Should I listen to a podcast about whatever? Or should I invest in coaching about whatever, And, what it comes down to is, well, what's for the sake of what? What's your relationship to yourself, to your purpose, to that which we call God, which is a unique relationship for everyone? And then we're going to have a compass, like a North Star for what are we going to do with our health? What are we going to do with our relationship? What values are we going to bring into raising our children, et cetera, right? And
mhm.
leading our companies and all of it. So you, so I think yeah, I started what I do during sessions for those who haven't yet experienced a session with me is I will transcribe what my clients are saying as they're saying it. By the
Mm.
way, what is your experience of having me do that?
Oh, okay. We're going to go right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was like, oh, I love this. You know, I've worked with different coaches. We've done different things. I've tried to look at a lot of different ways to work on my past stories. And so,
And you have, I can vouch
yeah.
for that. Really have.
And I have, and it's helped, you know, everything's helped. You know, when you work on yourself, you're helping yourself. When you care about yourself to be loving and looking into those things, it's always good. But I knew I needed more. And when I just kind of got introduced to you, I'm like, that's the person I need to meet with. And so literally one of the first times that we connected, I was really, I'm always like, if I'm going to connect with somebody, it's because I'm trusting in them. And, you know, I looked into you a little bit, you know, I followed your Instagram and I was like, this is a person I need to be working with, because I had been yearning and searching for a teacher to really help me. I kind of felt stuck in where I was. And so we just jumped into it and I was really open. I kind of just let my heart out of kind of just some of my past stories and things I wanted to work on. And you just were like typing away on your computer. And I'm just like pouring out like all my feelings. And, you know, I probably said like and 1,000 times. But you just listened and you gave me a space to really share my feelings and how it was. And for me, I've said a lot of my past multiple times and I've worked on things, but it's different when you speak it and then you can look at it on a piece of paper. And so it's different. And so after I spoke some of my stories that we were going to work on, I would look at it on the document on the computer and you would have me reread it. And so it seemed like a simple process, but it was so profound, because I would read my story and I would get emotional. Like I could feel it again. And my body would get tense and you'd be like, okay, now breathe. And so I brought in the breath and I would let it go. And then I would, you know, go through the story and I would reread it. And then we would rework some of the words. And then by the end, which was really sometimes a story would be able to be looked at and reworked in, you know, 5 to 30 minutes. It was like simple. And I would reread it and it was, I think the big thing was you have taught me to bring in God and breath into my story and into my body. And that's helped me to work on the feelings that have been stored in my body from the stories.
Wow. Yeah. And so 2 sessions ago, you were speaking now. It's been what, 6 months-ish since we met. And you were speaking and I wrote it down and I showed it back to you. And you're like, wait, I said that? And I'm like, yeah, this is what you just said. So it's interesting because we aren't always aware of what we're even saying. And this is the case with positive things, like 2 weeks ago when you're counting all of the gratitudes and accomplishments of the last 6 months. And this is also equally true, you know, when it comes to harder stories or things that we're working through. And what happens then that we've talked about is, you know, oftentimes people will start and they won't, it's like this with the more difficult stories, often the sentences aren't even formulated. And or say we're thinking about, you know, what we want to create in life and it's really exciting. And it's like this idea and then this idea and then a half sentence here and a half sentence there and then a but and a like and an and now we're somewhere else in the story. And it's not a formulated thought. And what we learn in Kabbalistic teachings, which is a lot of, you know, kind of the perspective that I bring in a way, in a very practical way, is that in order for something to go from where it's belief and thought to physically manifested in the world, whether that manifestation is a healing of something physical or an overcoming of a story or a creation of an art project or a new expansion in the business, etc. In order to go from the belief to the actual manifestation, we have to be able to articulate it and feel it. So with that said, I thought maybe you could read what you said that I transcribed.
Yeah.
And just share that. with everyone.
Yeah. And I want to just say thank you for giving me space to really come to where I am right now, over the last few months, because like I was searching for this, and I'm just grateful for where I am right now, because reading this, like you're gonna see why. Okay, so I now have more confidence in myself, and my connection with God has allowed me to put boundaries and people in place that help me delegate tasks and teach a team and future teams how to take ownership and responsibility to create the same for themselves. I mix business and personal stuff all the time, and I still do, but this has allowed me to put a different space. It doesn't feel like I'm separating from my husband. We have actually become closer together. And that one's the biggest one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
I feel comfortable in my body and in my relationship with him. It has allowed me to know what I need and to state it. I am in a place where I don't criticize myself as much. I'm feeling the emotion, and I can ask, where is this coming from? And I try to look at that, so that way I can keep advancing my relationship and being present in the moment. I feel more connected to God than I ever have. So I feel I can actually start speaking what I want. For so long, I felt so guilty, but now I am connected. See, you got to breathe, because even now I'm like, oh, I need to breathe more.
Yeah. Yeah, because
for so long I felt so guilty, but now I am connected. And that's like, I think that one of the biggest things for me is I feel really connected to myself and to God. I do know I can say things because I am connected to God, and I can say what I want, and it's okay. And if it doesn't work out, it's not that it wasn't in alignment. It's just that things changed, and God brought me better than I even was hoping for. And God is showing me a better path.
Yeah. How's it feel to read that again?
It feels good. It feels good, and like still even like powerful. Like I could feel it in my arms, and yeah, I feel good energy, before, like when I wanted this connection and to feel so connected in my body, and I felt really tense in my chest and in my shoulders and in my heart.
Right.
And doing the work that we have, it's really just allowed me to connect with myself again.
Yeah. And I think for context, like I'd love to, to talk a little bit about when we met, and just like we were talking about some of the different categories of things that we were working on. Because by the way, I mean, Cassi owns a business with her husband. You guys run like a pretty big plumbing business out in Denver. And it's like, you're managing a lot, right? Like you're doing a lot, you're running a team, you're running a business. By the way, you're also a wife and a mother. By the way, you're also a creative woman with like other, projects and ideas, and just your life. Right. And so that piece, I think about, well, how this has affected, both your family, your relationship, and your business. So I'd love for you to go in a little bit just for context of like, what we started with.
I was really searching for somebody at the time. And it was kind of at a time where there was a lot of different transitions going on. I was really trying to figure out and get some clarity on, my role within, our company, my relationship with Levi and how that works. We had been operating a plumbing business since 2012. And so it's been a lot of years of operating a business. Obviously different changes. We've all worn different hats and we've been in different roles. But mainly I've been like really wanting to kind of just grow my spirituality and grow my connection with God. And so I knew I was needing that. And it wasn't so much like, we've been very blessed with work. Like our business, with High Five Plumbing, so that's our plumbing business, it's brought me so much connection. And honestly, even just the formation of the business itself and the name and the idea, I'm like, this was all from God. And so I know like the business brought my husband and I together. We've been together since my 8th grade summer. So we've gone through different a lot of different phases. Like we've essentially grown up together.
Yeah.
But I was like at a moment where I really needed some more guidance. But specifically, I felt that I had health issues in the past. I had a lot of gut issues, and it was probably a lot of stress, a lot of just the different things. Probably some of my past stories that I hadn't worked through, eating habits, not bringing in as much self-love and taking care of myself the way that, your body really wants to, making sure you're drinking water, all of those things. I was at the point where I just really needed somebody. And so we started working together, and like right away, like a few sessions, I'm like, yep, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. Thank you, God. And so, like right away, we just started working on some of my past stories that I had been dealing with for years, 10, 15, 20 years, stories from like my childhood, growing up. And I grew up in a conservative Christian religion. And so just growing up and, figuring out who I was and how I fit in and just all of that, I was looking for more growth. And so meeting up with you, we just started going through like those stories, and I started really figuring out what my stories meant and how God was really there during those stories. And it brought me a peace that I was able to feel it across my body. I had really been struggling with a few stories specifically that I felt like I was carrying in my chest and in different parts of my body. And after working through those stories, like I could immediately feel my body it was like I was able to like release it. And even now, like I feel like it's like releasing off of my hands and I shake it off. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel good because of the past stories that I had going in my head. And that was one of the main things that you've helped me, is to articulate what I'm saying and feeling and finish the thought. There were so many stories that I had these questions like, what was wrong with me? Why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
Like that's a question that's going to that could bring on pain forever, like.
Yeah. Actually, here, I think we can do an example actually with, I just wrote something you just said.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in a different, am I in your document? No, I'm in a different document. Let me put this in your document. So I share a Google document with Cassi and with my client. Here, I just put it a little bit under. It says what you just said. You said, it was like, I feel like that part.
Okay.
So this is what you said, if you want to just read that out loud.
It was like, I feel like I was able to release it.
Right. And then we kind of change that to this. Breathe.
I feel like I was able to release it.
Then breathe. We're not done. But we go through step by step, okay?
I was able to release it.
And breathe. Any commentary or difference so far of changing that language?
It's less fluff, more direct, and it just is calmer. It's not just so many, that first statement, it was like, I feel like I was able to release it. There's a lot of, instead of just, I was able to release it.
Right. Which really is just like a stepping into that more and a claiming of that more, which I noticed with your statement of, I feel more connected to God than I ever have. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like, more connected versus I am more connected, and claiming that, and then stepping into this new identity of ourselves. And so to just edit it one more time, we would define it. What is it?
It was the thought that I was not connected to God. Because when I actually breathe and I actually look at it, I know I have been always connected to God. And I think that sometimes, that you've been really helpful, is because we just looked at situations and different stories and really just gone through this whole process where you let me talk and you let me just go and go. And then we take a step back and we speak slowly, and I breathe a lot. Like I breathe a lot.
And we get clear. Yeah. And the breath, I mean, it's our it's a connection to God for sure. It's our life force. It's the animating life force. God, breathes us into life at each time we take an inhale.
Yeah.
Inhaling is not really a voluntary thing. It's a gift every single time. And something I want to just mention that I also think is really special and interesting is that, like, technically you and I come from different religions, right?
Mhm.
Ultimately, it's the same God. And I think it's so beautiful that, through this process, me coming from the Jewish religion, you coming from the Christian religion, and not just coming from, but still being a part of, right? In both of our cases. And yet through this process, you can still grow deeper in your personal connection to God in the way that is unique and special and appropriate for you on your path, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been so good, and I've loved it, like getting to connect with you and to really just hear from you and everything. Like, you went out to Israel and I got to hear all of your stories and see how you were just taking that in, and that was like really special for me, to watch how you get to connect with God. And really, I think that I initially found you through you were on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things that really just, I was like, I need to talk to you, was you talked about breath. And that was actually just, bringing God into your being.
Right.
And I remember just crying, thinking, it seems so simple, but it's like, that's so huge. It's like, just the breath is God. You're bringing God into you. And so, really, when I worked on bringing more breath into my body,
Right.
then I know that I'm bringing more God and more presence and more of that into my being.
And creating more intimacy with God and intimacy with ourselves and with our body. I think in that podcast, I did, I could even link that podcast here as well. But I remember one of the things I would have spoken about that I talk about sometimes is the idea that in the Hebrew, there's actually many names that refer to that which we call God. And most of those names, interestingly, are actually more referring to the way we relate to a certain aspect of God. Because God is truly nameless and beyond our comprehension at the end of the day. And the most common name for God that we have in the Hebrew is this 4-letter word, and I'll just give the brief of it here. Is a 4-letter word, the tetragrammaton we call it. I love that word. And really, rather than a 4-letter word, I think of it as a 4-symboled narrative. And it's these 4 Hebrew letters that, in Judaism, we don't pronounce it. We don't even try to pronounce it. It's like very taboo to say it. But what growing up, you're like, oh, it's very taboo to say it. You can't say it, which is true. But what I realized is that even beyond the taboo-ness of it is just that it's not actually pronounceable. It doesn't have vowels. It's these very nebulous letters that are like, how do you actually say that? People try, but is that really how, like, and what I realized is, oh, if you really tried to say it, it would probably most likely sound like taking a deep breath.
Mhm.
And that's where I was like, oh, so you take a deep breath and you exhale it all the way out. And that you've just called out to God. You've just said God's name in the most deepest, intimate, beloved type of way that one could do.
Yes.
So I love that too.
And that's just breathing, just calling out to God. And that's like, and when you think about that in the moment, and you're saying that, it's like, and that's where I feel like that's just allowing you to be more present and in your body. Because I remember a time where my health was like in such a bad place, like years ago.
Yeah.
And I heard this like song about, like God just breathing the air into your lungs. And I just remember being thankful that, like, okay, at least my body I can breathe, like my stomach was having all these issues. They told me I had IBS and I didn't know what was going on, like all these things, but I'm like, okay, I can breathe. Like I can breathe, I can bring God in. And so I think that's the biggest thing for people. And I've noticed when I'm upset or I'm in like a fear situation in my mind, it's because I'm tense and I'm not bringing the breath actually into my chest and into my stomach. Like I've
Right.
been able to start checking into that a lot quicker.
Yeah. And in those moments where we're not really breathing and we're, short of breath, we're probably also on, at least on the conscious level, not thinking that, oh, this moment is also a gift from God. We're probably in our small mindedness thinking that we have to take the whole world on our shoulders and handle it ourselves. And so when we bring the breath back in that conscious, intentional way, it's also, oh, I'm reconnecting to, okay, this too is from God. Let me open my eyes. Let me see the bigger picture here. Let me see a gift in this situation. And, God, our connection to God and prayer and blessing, it doesn't have to be something that's so religious or rigid or prescribed or even saved just for church or synagogue or temple or whatever. It can be brought into the moments of the day. And we talk about this too, how in my practice, there's blessings like that are just sprinkled throughout everything in the day that can elevate a moment, like the blessing for, before you eat and after you eat and when you wake up and when you wash your hands and, when you go to the bathroom and when you hear thunderclap, and just when you do something new that you want to commemorate the moment and just for all these little beautiful, oh my God, I see a rainbow. Let me make a blessing, for when you're, and then even like we were talking about, how do I bring gratitude and blessing and God into the moments of like, I'm folding laundry?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah. That was a good moment I had this week. And so, yeah, we've been talking about bringing in little blessings. And so, yeah, the funny little story happened. I was folding laundry and, I'm just sitting upstairs and I have my basket there and I'm, folding my socks. I put them together, put them away. And then I pull out my husband's socks, put those away, and then I'm like, oh, thank you, God, for his socks. I'm glad I have this clothes. Like I'm thinking, like, oh, I'm glad we have these clothes and they're clean, and I'm able to put these in our drawer. Thank you for this home, and like just trying to be really present in the moment because typically when I'm doing laundry, I'm like, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do at work? I'm not really in the moment. And like every piece of clothing I would grab, I would like get a little bit more emotional. And I was kind of laughing about it at first, but then suddenly I just got very like, I felt something.
Right.
And I got emotional and I really felt a big piece of gratitude. And it was simply, I was folding Levi's underwear. Like, thank you, God, for this underwear and this man. He's a good man. Thank you so much for this laundry that I get to fold and put away. So that way, we can be together and we can be in this home together. Thank you. And he walked in the room and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm emotional folding your underwear. And it was honestly a sweet moment because I actually did articulate. I said, I love you, Levi. And like, I don't know why I got emotional today, but literally folding your clothes, I just am so grateful for you and like where we are and everything that has come. And you could tell like his eyes got, kind of glassy where he got kind of emotional and he was just touched in the moment. And he was like, thank you. And we kissed and went on about our morning. But, and I think that's where, if we bring God into those moments, like you're going to find that. You're going to find the little things that you can be grateful for, like that you get to wash someone's dirty underwear and fold them and put them away clean because every day they get to wake up next to you and put those on. Like, that's good.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I feel teary listening to it. I feel the emotion of it, right? Like these things that we sometimes complain about, someone else is praying for, and can we see the absolute blessing? Oh, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah. And I think that's just because, in my marriage and in growing with Levi, like we've gone through many things, and it's like, even just like the little things that you have to be grateful for, like, and that's where you've been so good. Like we had a good couple of weeks where we were sending back messages of gratitude moments, like we were articulating. And I love how we can, instead of just texting out something too, we're working on sending out voice memos, and that's, working on actually articulating our speech.
Right.
And so that's been fun just to actually send out little moments of gratitude.
Yeah. It's been fun for me too. And for people who are also listening, that's part of what I do with my private clients is that we have voice memos with each other and we go really deep in that way. And we have this like intimate relationship where it's, interwoven into, we don't speak every single day, but some weeks we will talk more throughout the week. And it's just little snippets. It doesn't necessarily take up much of our time, but it's like exactly the injection of, whatever specifically we're working on. I love the stories, and I loved that story, especially because isn't that the most like quintessential example of, whatever soap opera you're watching that's like, oh, the husband leaves his dirty underwear everywhere. Oh my, and to be able to see the gift in those little things. And by the way, it's not like you're some woman at home who's like being the maid to your husband. Again, like you guys co-own and run this industry, and like you're a powerful modern woman, and you get to have a loving husband who you've been through it with, and to get to this place where you're like, thank God I have a kind, loving man who's my husband, and I get to do this, thing of service for him, to support him in exchange for the ways that he supports me. And I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's been a good journey.
God.
It's been a good journey.
So are there, we talked about the categories, and of course I wrote it down when you said it because I do that, but your relationship with your husband, running the business. By the way, you as a leader, I mean, you were already a strong leader before, but I have seen you step in to your leadership. Particularly, I'm thinking, of how you lead in your business, although I'm sure it also expands to other parts of your life, but how you lead as a leader in your business, and then, eating habits, gut issues, self-love. Can you share some more stories? Like, can we pick a topic and share a story?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a few, but I want to see what you come up with.
Yeah. I could share some things about like work and really how I've brought in connection and God into work, just things that I feel like I've done there. We could talk about, kind of my journey with like my gut health. I don't know, where do you want to start?
Let's talk about a few. I want to talk about the gut health because it's a whole other aspect of what I do, which is the clinical in the herbal medicine. And we've actually done a whole journey with clinical herbal medicine with you. But the story I'm thinking of that I'd love for you to share is the one where you had an employee who was leaving. And there was like a beautiful moment where he was sharing all of his wins, and I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah. So I actually have a degree in elementary education. And so I taught 1 year. I taught like 6th grade math for 1 year. And then, so I loved it. I loved teaching. I love connecting with people. I love seeing them grow. I love actually inspiring people to be like, no, believe in yourself. You can do it, and seeing that. And that's like, and especially with kids, because they're energetic and fun and they're like, yeah, let's go do it. So I love that aspect. And so with Hi-Fi Plumbing, our slogan is every call ends with a high five. And, even just talking about like, little did I know, like putting those words out there, even just saying every call ends with a high five, like that put up a precedence of like how we're going to treat our team and our clients and our community, like, and so it kind of just built our culture naturally, because our business is Hi-Fi Plumbing. Like, you're going to build a team that wants to high five each other. You're going to work with clients that are happy and high fiving you. And so it's like, it's easy to build that way. Naturally. And so this employee, we have what's called Be the Reason Someone High Fives. And there's all these bulletin boards set up on the wall, and we take pictures at the end of the jobs of our technicians high-fiving clients. So you'll see pictures of our plumbers wearing their baseball style jerseys, because that's what we wear. You'll see them high-fiving, their clients, and they'll be in front of the plumbing stuff. So sometimes you'll see them in front of the toilets that they installed, or the water heaters they installed, or sometimes they'll be outside in like their garden, or it's just like random places that they take pictures. And it's really cool because both people are smiling and you can see the connection, like they're coming together. Like, our mission is to come together as more than individuals to create a positive impact on our team, clients, and community, one high five at a time. And so that picture like shows it all, like we're coming together to do something. And so we also put up any of their 5-star reviews. We actually cut them out. We print them, cut them out, put them behind a color piece of paper, like it is elementary style. And we pin them up. Like everybody gets so like their fingers hurt from pinning up reviews, but we do it. And so we had this technician that had been with us for a couple of years, and he was moving back to Boston. And I happened to be at the office, and he was coming back by to turn in his keys and to, do his final exit. And he said, "Hey, can I take down my pictures and my reviews?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I hate when you guys do that to me." And so we like walked over to the wall. We saw his board, and I was looking at it, and I saw all the pictures there. And we started looking at him, and he started laughing at some of them. And he's like, "I remember this customer." And he would tell me like the stories of that customer. And, I, of course, then started crying as I'm pulling down all of these. And I'm like, "Dang you, Lucas." Well, this is why I don't do this. If anybody leaves me, I don't pull these off. I make somebody else do it.
Oh.
And I just told him, because he's going on to go be with his family out in Boston and to, go be a plumber out there. So I know he's going to do really good. And he's actually taking all those pictures. He's going to put them in like a little, kind of like if you would think of like a little scrapbook type of situation. And he's going to go into his interview and tell them, "Hey, these are all my reviews, happy customers." And he's going to go in and, probably asking for a little bit more, having a little bit more plumbing confidence and going into his next interview. But it meant something to me because, and we always tell, our team, we actually have this high five bulletin board where they paint their hand either blue or yellow, because those are our colors. And they get to put their hand up on our high five wall. And we tell them, you're a part of our team, whether you're here for 2 weeks or for your lifetime. We want you to know that your hand has been a part of our, business. And so for me, I really love working with people, and we do like Lucas, we worked and we built something really good. He really grew as a plumber out here and as an individual. I watched him really grow on a personal level, and I was like really proud of him. And so, just almost like a proud mama putting all of the little like scrapbook papers and being like, "Here you go." So like at the end of the year, we're going to take down everybody's and put them in like a little scrapbook, and they'll have those like as a little like memory for 2023. And then every year we, start the board over.
Yeah.
But it's just like little ways in your, and I tell people like we actually do shop tours of our company, and people are like, "Oh, it looks fun in here." And I'm like, "Well, we brought a lot of color into it, so we really do make it look good. Like, when you walk into an elementary classroom, it looks good, it looks fun."
Yeah.
And so we have that at our company. We have our blue and yellow colors everywhere. We have things that really make it feel good, because you want your team to want to feel good when they're there. Like environment does matter. Yeah, it's been fun. Like it's easy to have that connection because it's, we're high-fiving, but there's little things like any company could build that. It's, how can you build that within your company? It's kind of easy to do. You just have to put something together. And
Yeah.
it's fun too, because other employees, like if we've ever had an event there at the shop, other employees, you'll see them taking their spouses by, and they'll show them their brag wall.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
really proud of it.
and it's so important, right? And it's like, it's easy to, you get a 5-star review and it's great and it feels good for a second, and then you move on and there's already another challenge or another obstacle or another goal and you're already on. Versus like, no, like this is special. Like, let's take time and put it up there and reinforce, and you're drawing out those qualities. And that's why when you shared your wins the other day, I wrote them down, and then I had you reread them and then reread them with the breath and say, don't just glance over that. Like, let's actually draw out these qualities and help you to identify even more with the positive parts of yourself, because then that's what will grow.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I love that story because it's fun and it shows just such a fun atmosphere. And like, if anyone's in Denver and they need a plumbing company, they should definitely call High Five Plumbing. and the culture that you're creating there. And then just what I've seen of you growing, even from this work, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I'm gonna hire Sheefra, who's this, spiritual coach, so that I can expand my company and grow my business. And yet that's exactly what you've done in the last 6 months. Like and I remember when we first met, there was a lot of unknown and stress around it and uncertainty around it. And I've watched you outsource and free up so much of your time. And now you guys are expanded into this new building. And I mean, if you want to talk about any of that, I mean, I've just watched you expand and free up. And not only are you expanding, but you're creating more spaciousness for yourself while you're expanding. I mean, you're dreaming up new projects while you're growing into a new space. Like that's not typically what you think of when you're going to take on more, that you're also going to just suddenly be way more creative and free. That's, and yet that's what I'm observing is actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got really excited even when you were just saying that, because I'm like, yes. Yeah. Because I look back to even when we started working, and I just felt like I was kind of stuck. I mean, I knew I could work through it, but I had so much going on basically in my head and my body. Like I had so many thoughts going on in my head, so many feelings going on in my body.
Right.
That we worked on figuring that out, bringing in clarity and me speaking it. And that's when things have really been changing. And I'm really excited even moving forward, because I'm like, we worked through some of the harder stuff initially, you know what I mean? Like some of the initial calls, we're working on some of the stories that I've been working with for my whole life. And so moving forward, it's going, like, I'm really excited. I've always been very hopeful, and like God is good and he's going to always provide you. And I think one of the biggest things that I realized is I had an issue for a long time with this thought that if I did something wrong or I didn't do something right in the time, that God was going to take that blessing and I wasn't going to get it. Like for so long, I believed that. And me working with you, I've realized like, no, God is so good. Like if for some reason I miss something on some path, like it's going to come back around. Like God's good and he wants me to have every single blessing. And I think about that with my kids. Like if my kids were at a time where they just were rebellious or they weren't wanting to learn or whatever it was, like I would still give them an opportunity. I would never withhold anything from them. And for so long, I was thinking like I put so much shame on myself and guilt, and you really helped me work through that. And but specifically too, like, when we first started working together, people always say like, you can't mix business and personal. And I'm like, that's my whole life working with Levi.
Yeah.
What? I'm like, that's not me. Like I mix everything. Like there's not really separation.
It's your life. Yeah.
But you've taught me to put space and boundaries with certain things where I can still feel and be a certain way with a business and feel like I'm connected, but still make sure that I have that space and boundary where I'm able to bring in other things, like for so long, it was just all about High Five Plumbing and how this was going to work. And really, I've created some space where I've been able to delegate tasks, to like some new team members coming on. And it's been fun to see like just that space where I'm going to be able to bring in more things.
Right. Like instead of being the co-owner of High Five Plumbing, who's married to your business partner, you get to be the co-owner of High Five Plumbing, and you get to be the wife of your husband, and it seems like a subtle difference, but it's actually a huge difference.
Yeah. And I feel like it's been really good to even just see like how we both have grown, Levi and myself, and how we're both learning how to articulate things better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been good.
You mentioned this before, but I just want to reiterate and bring it up again, that some of these stories that we started with, and this is the case with the clients who I work with, usually, I mean, we all have some stories in our lives that are heavy. And like you said, these are stories. You've done a lot of work, which is part of why it's such a pleasure for me to work with you, because you're already very familiar with how to do personal work and emotional work. And it's like you've prepared the canvas, you've already stretched it out and you've already done whatever. I don't know, I'm not a painter, but it's like you have to prepare the canvas. Well, you've already prepared the canvas, you've already laid the foundation. And so now we get to go really deep. And what is cool is that, you said, okay, some of these stories I've worked on and I've been thinking and talking about and feeling about for, decades, some of them. And sure, you've evolved with them and you're not in the same place with them as you were. And yet, some of those stories, like you said, we would, I forget the word you used, but we work them, we would go through an entire story. And these aren't just, oh, I picked up my mail and I got annoyed at the neighbor's dog barking stories. Oftentimes these are the heaviest stories in someone's life that I will be working on with people. And we will work through the charge of that story for the most part, sometimes within a single session or half of a session. It's actually incredibly rapid. And it's because I'm not talking to you about these things. We're not like talking in a rational way, like, well, why do you feel that way? And let's explore that. We're not exploring it. We're going in using the breath and your language in a very, very specific way and discharging it from the nervous system. Which is why these stories can essentially release from a trauma sense within 45 minutes when they're 20-year-old stories that were the story of someone's life. And it's not to say that looking back, that story won't still have a sad story is still a sad story. A hard story, looking back, can still feel like, wow, that was really hard and sad and all the things. But how it plays into the present is the thing that we are concerned about mostly, right?
Yeah. It was amazing, like actually going through it with you, because you'd be like, okay, I would read a sentence and then maybe like the last two words of that sentence, I maybe have like an inflection in my voice. And I'd be like, okay. And we'd be like, okay, that's a charge there. Like those two words are really charged.
Subtlest little things that we train ourselves to listen for, like the inflection, that is actually a gateway into a whole thing that's going on subconsciously that we don't notice if we're not trained to look for it and listen for it and what to do about it.
And then even feel it. Like I could feel it like in my arms. Like, I don't know, I could feel like those like words being like, and so even just, okay, I need to say this again. And so like there'd be times where like that sentence specifically, if I was still having those charged words, then you would have me say the sentence again, slower.
Right.
Each word, like sometimes I almost felt silly. Like I felt like I was reading it so slow and like this.
Yeah.
But when I was able to do that, I'm able to like kind of feel my whole body. And it wasn't just like that energy was getting stuck in one spot of my body. It just was.
And we're discharging it. There's a story that I read, I think it was from like Rwanda, where there were these Western psychotherapists that came in after a lot of trauma in that country. And the community there, I mean, I'm paraphrasing the story, obviously, but basically these Western psychotherapists would come in, they'd take one person out of the group, they'd put them into a sterile, closed indoor room with a white plain room, a person in white, closed door, no airflow, whatever, by themselves, and say, let's talk about the trauma. And you're up in the head and you're just recycling it. Versus, in that community where it's like, well, let's get with community and let's be together and let's release, let's dance, let's sing, and like release. And so in a different way, because we're, still in the Western world and living in the way that we do, but in a different, we're using a different approach to be able to access that somatic release. And like you said, you feel it in your arms, you feel the energy waving through your body. And it's true that, and perhaps this is a segue into, we can talk about the gut and digestive work that we've also done together in the herbal medicine, because we do carry emotion in our body. I mean, even in the simplest way of thinking about it, when I am angry or frustrated, I'm tensing and I'm not breathing as well. I'm not breathing as well, which means I'm probably getting oxygenated more poorly into my body. And when that's happening, and clenching, and it's not like, oh, I'm clenching my fist. It's like, oh, people could be clenching a muscle in their psoas or in their abdomen or in their pelvic floor that they're not even consciously aware that they're doing, that ultimately is creating these problems down the line. And we really, our physical body is it's our costume. It's like, this hand is a glove over my spiritual hand. And it's mirroring something that's going on internally, either very directly, or it could be, a little more deeper of an issue. But so therefore, like, also simultaneously, when we started, you had already done a lot of work around gut issues, and you've alluded to it here in this conversation already some, but that was something we worked on right away too, because as a clinical herbalist, like, you filled out a whole intake, and I custom formulated a formula for you that you took for, I think, a couple months. I don't know if you're still
I'm still taking them.
you are. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Share about that part of your experience.
I wanted to share, I'm glad you brought this up, because I felt like, even, you just talking about that. So I had worked with previously a lady, her name was Yenny, and she, you've taught me a lot. And well, what happened was she passed away, and while we were working together. And I really remember in the moment, like, I had a lot of feelings going on, and you kind of taught me a couple of ways, just because of, your religion and things that you guys do, that you brought into when somebody passes away. Like, and so when Yenny, my previous doctor, passed away, you kind of taught me a couple of things to really, like, bring in that presence and in the moment. And so I was able to actually bring in some things that reminded me of her. And so I was able to, in a moment where I was going to be feeling probably a lot of pain, and then a lot of, because death is like that, you feel there's a lot of pain involved. You taught me to bring in a lot of more of the presence and the gratitude and her love and joy that she shared with me previously. And so I'm excited to share with, everybody kind of some of my journey on my health gut, because I've had multiple teachers, and I've really looked into figuring out what was going on with my body, because I've had all these feelings in my stomach and gut issues. So basically, like, multiple years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I started having a lot of stomach issues. Where my stomach would be hurting really bad in the morning for about 2 hours. I just felt like I had so much stress. And a lot of it was stress, probably with work. We had been building the business for so many years. And so I essentially started looking for help. And of course, right away, I just go to the doctor and I'm like, hey, I have this going on. And they're like, you have IBS. Nothing you can
even mean, right? Oh, so frustrating.
Yeah. There's not really much you could do. Like, here's a pill or something. And I'm like, well, my body was fine before. Like, I don't want to just go take a pill. I want to know what's going on, because it was digesting things fine. I wasn't having these stomach pains. Like, there has to be more. And, I just didn't want to just take some pill that would just help the issue, but help whatever symptom I have, but not help with the issue.
Okay.
And so I just felt like I was getting pushed from doctor to doctor. I wasn't getting an answer. They were taking all these different tests. And essentially, finally, I had somebody tell me, hey, I have kind of like this hippie doctor that you can connect with. And so I met with Yenny, and she, she was a midwife who, wasn't really practicing anymore. She was, like, retired. And had her farm and where she would really just connect with different people. And so I met with her to really get my gut in order. And, she is an energy worker as well. And, that was like the first time I had really ever been exposed to any kind of like energy work, or honestly, someone just having a skill that God gave them to help people. Because I had been, just told to go to the doctor, you just go to the clinic or you just go to the doctor. And there wasn't like so much of like, your body is smart.
Right.
It can help heal itself. And so when I met with Annie, it was really good.
Your
And
body
she
is perfect and healthy, and if there's something's going wrong, there's a deeper thing going on.
helped. But Yenny, she was really good about just sitting with me and talking. And it's like, you can just know when you're meeting with somebody, they give you that space to understand you. And she did that with me. But we got to, it was interesting because after like meeting with her for the first time, I just got on some different supplements and I could just naturally feel my body feel better. But I was really open. And I remember our first time meeting, I just said, God, I don't know. I said a little like prayer before we met. I said, God, I'm glad I'm able to meet with Yenny. I don't know why our paths are crossing, but I've been searching for help and I really need you to just help her see what she needs to see so she can help my body. I was searching for that, but I specifically asked for that help. And then, we just went from there and we worked for a couple of years together, and my gut health it got better. My gut issues started going away. I noticed right away she was just giving me different minerals and herbs. Essentially she would scan my body and she would be able to sense if I needed different supplements, and it worked really well. Like my body adjusted really well to it. And what I loved about her too, though, is we did emotional work, where she did help me work through some of my past stories. But it was on a different level. She would tell me, oh, there's emotions that are stuck in your body. And at times I remember now thinking back, and it was probably because I was going to be meeting you, Sheefra. So we were going to be working on those stories. But at the time she told me, I said, I'm impatient, Yenny. I said, I want all these stories out of my body. Like, I want these stories gone. And she goes, the stories will work on you when you're ready, you'll work on the stories when you're ready, or they'll work on you when they're ready. And so I just said, well, that's kind of weird. I want to work on them now. And, but I don't think it was my time yet, because I think I needed to meet you. And really, you helped me to understand where I was with my body and my feelings and where I wanted to go with my future. And you really helped me to just put it all together. Like,
Right.
I've never felt more connected in my body. I don't have all of those old stories and feelings that I had been storing forever. And
Right.
I feel in a really strong place, like stronger than I ever have. And, after, like I mentioned, Yenny passing away, and for so long, I remember being really scared. Like when I first started working with her, like, what am I going to do when because she was older when I met her. She had her gray hair, her straight little bangs, and her little pigtails. And she was this older granny that would work her farm. And I'm like, at some point, she's going to pass away. And so, actually, that reminded me, because probably about like 4 weeks prior, we were talking during one of our sessions working through something, and I had this thought like, I wish I had more time. And it probably was related to another story. But I really remember feeling that words and thinking, wow, that's a charged word. And I thought there's going to come a time where something's going to happen where I'm going to say, I wish I had more time. And so I kind of worked through that. And it's like, well, of course, whenever someone passes or someone moves away, I'm going to wish I had more time. And it's usually because I really loved them and I want them to be there. So I remember I was out in Hawaii, and we were out actually on a boat, and we were getting ready to head back in. And I got a text that Yenny had passed away. And of course I was out there, and I was just like, okay, just breathe. And so I'm breathing in the ocean air, and I'm like, and that thought came to me, oh, I wish I had more time, because I'm like, I wish I would have been able to tell Yenny all of these things, and to just tell her a little bit more, a little bit more gratitude things. And Yeah. And so we worked through that. Through that story of, I wish I had more time. And, after I found that Yenny passed away, and, I felt that I wish I had more time. Like, I worked through that in that moment. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, of course I wish I had more time with her. I loved working with her. I loved, she was an amazing lady to spend time with. Um, and so, like, working through that was really good. And then where are we at?
I mean, there's so many ways we can go with this, right? Because even I'll jump in here and share a few reflections from what you've shared. But one thing that I'm reflecting on is just how, you're there in that boat and you get that message, and you already, I have to commend you for your own receptivity to everything that we've been learning and doing together. Because you fast forward a few months, you're out in the middle of the ocean getting news that's really hard news, and you already immediately know some tools to implement. And you immediately are going towards that direction of, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to work. Oh, this is the story that's coming up for me. I'm going to work through this story. Right.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, which direction do we want to go?
Yeah, and I think, after working with her, I felt like something was still missing. Like,
Right.
I still needed more. And that's when, a few months before she passed away, like December, that's when I was searching for like somebody to work with. And that's when I met you. And just hearing your story and because I know you had issues as well with like your body, you had like eczema, right?
Yeah.
And it was, just hearing your story about you talking about the pain like it was causing you, and just looking into that and like going through that whole process, I felt very like, okay, she got connected to her body, so she knows how to do this. And so
Yeah.
that's why I reached out to you and was like, let's start working together,
Yeah.
and going through like this whole process.
I used to have, I mean, I had eczema since a kid. And then it got so bad when I was, in college and just after college, like my whole neck was, it felt like I had an alligator skin. It was so horrible. And yeah, that was my path too, is all these different modalities of the herbal medicine, which helps, diet, which helps, energy medicine also, which isn't what I lead with in my work, but it is something that, when appropriate, we bring it out. But really drawing out the stories, because it is so connected. And now, I mean, look, it's smooth, it's great, but that was certainly a journey for me too. And they're all different elements, and there's not like I know the modalities. I have a whole book of modalities that I use, and I know the ones that are usually most effective, but there's no cookie cutter like, all right, let's put you into this recipe and spit you out. Each person's journey, each soul's journey it's very unique. It's very unique to you. It's very unique to them.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
And
making,
that's what I think too, even just like, even when we met, I was just like, I remember even just praying like, God, I don't even know how I met Sheefra, but we met.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna be working together. So can you just
Oh,
please bring like, and then even you, like when we would work together, like bringing in that, awareness and
yeah.
God and intention to your meetings. Like
Right.
even us working together, like I've worked with different people and different coaches, and the initial even, it wasn't even a contract, but it was almost just like, hey, this is how we're gonna be working together. It wasn't even a contract, but it was just this beautiful, this is how we're going to be showing up for each other. And I felt like it just put a good space of like how we're going to show up and put our intention
Oh
into
yeah.
together.
The contract slash, right. It's not really a legal contract, but the quote unquote contract that I sent you, that I send my clients, right? Well, really what I'm doing is I'm creating safety, and I'm creating container for both myself and for you, that this is what we're stepping into. We're creating a ceremony around it. We're creating articulation and speech and words, right? To form a container around the work that we're doing with clear expectations and boundaries. And how do we navigate together. And that sets it up to be so much stronger of a container than just like, okay, pop in, pop out, call me, whatever, like that's loose. And what we're doing here is so rapidly transformative, in part, yeah, because of each, so much intentionality each step of the way. How do we open a container? How do we close a container? How do we maintain it in the meantime? And these are like behind the scenes things that you don't even know that I'm thinking of, necessarily. And I'm remembering now how we started. You heard a podcast, you contacted me, and I believe I started with, we did like one session, maybe like 1-2 hour story session or something, or maybe even a reading with my card deck, which is basically a gateway to a story session.
Yeah.
For, whatever, not that it was cheap, but like for a one-off price. That kind of makes it a little more accessible to just try one out. And then we did one. And then I think I offered, okay, well, if you want, you can apply this and we'll do a package of 3 within 1 month, and that you really get like a taste and experience. And then from there, we went into working together in a more deeper way. And I guess what I just want to say here too, for those that are listening, because this feels like a good thing to do, is, first of all, if anyone feels like they're listening and they're resonating and like they're also, you're listening and you're ready to release stories that are holding in your body, and you want to do it through all these different modalities, then that's something that if people are listening and they want to message me, which they can find me on Sheefra Bloom, whatisgodpodcast.com is for this podcast, and then Sheefra Bloom is like my Instagram, sheefrabloom.com, sheefrabloom@gmail.com. These are all the ways. It's Sheefra Bloom with 2 E's. As you can find me. And if you email me or message me on Instagram or however you want to, that you listen to this podcast with Cassi, then it would be my pleasure to offer you that same, progression that I offered to Cassi, because that was a really nice way to get to know each other.
Yeah. And I would tell people, like reach out right away, and just do one session, because you're going to be like, even if it's just like Sheefra is amazing. You're going to be like, you're going to feel the presence. You're going to feel God. You're going to be able to actually connect with yourself and feel good, and feel like you're ready for something like the next step. And so whether, like I knew right away after we met one time, I'm like, yep, this is who I'm ready to work with. Let's go. And I was really excited. Because I've worked and I put a lot of time into like personal development, just trying to really make myself better and in my relationships with my husband and business. And so even after just that first session and going into the next week, like I was just thanking God, like for you showing up on a podcast that I had listened to for, a couple of years. It was Meathead Hippie podcast.
Really.
I remember like listening to it, that first podcast, and I listened to it like 4 times, and I was like, wow, I got to meet with this lady. And then we met one time and it just went from there.
Well, yeah. And so, I offer that one session to folks who are listening. And then if that, if they want from there, the 3 sessions within a month as a way to get some kind of experience, right? And it's nice before committing to someone that, well, I want to make sure I have a connection and I want to, and I think you're right. Like people, you're welcome to just reach out to me at Sheefra Bloom and just experience the one session, because it will be transformative. It will be transformative. And one session is one session. If that's all you ever do, it will still have been transformative. And I will also say that part of why, we're talking for like an hour and a half right now about just story after story of the transformation that you've experienced over the last several months, and we're not even scratching the surface of it really, is because of your receptivity, you, Cassi, your receptivity, and you guys should all learn from Cassi, truly, of like your ability to say, I'm ready, I'm committing, I'm jumping in. You apply what we do together in a session, and then we're soaring off. And, you know, we are working on, like, as we come to this point where it's been about 6 months and looking into whatever will be next, what we are, you know, sometimes you go to therapy and you're in therapy for, a person could be in therapy for 2, 3, 20 years, whatever. And like, you're kind of still talking about the same things a little bit to some degree sometimes, right? It's not an uncommon experience. Or maybe even just a year later, like, we are off to new horizons, you know, like the things we're working on together now and that we're talking about now, it's so exciting. It's like, we're building new ships. We're building a new fleet out here. I mean, like, literally, actually,
Literally.
literally a new fleet, a plumbing fleet, a fleet of new trucks, the whole fleet, you know, like, and so that's funny. And so there is something to be said for, like, yeah, book a session. Like, that's my offer. And that's in honor of Cassi, you know, just that's something that I would love for everyone to get to experience and to make it accessible in that way. And because, Cassi, you show up week after week and you use that momentum and you build and you implement, like, that's why we're building a new fleet. You know, that's why, like, yes, even one session can help and can be transformational. But, you know, there's people and they think, well, let me just try booking one more in 6 months and one more in 6 months. And maybe the reason that some people end up talking about the same thing for years in therapy could be because it's a different modality, first of all, with a different purpose. But also sometimes people treat it that way of like, well, when I'm feeling really bad, I'll go in and I'll feel a little better. And for me, one of my motivations in my life with the eczema and stuff was like, how do I heal the root of this? How do I get to the root of this? Because I'm ready for different problems, you know, like, thank God, right? Like, but like, and so that's what I'm interested in doing with my clients too, is like, and that's why I use the herbal medicine when necessary. And I use the story work when necessary and the other, you know, things. And I'm going to add that practice I showed you. I'm going to add that here in just a moment. You guys are going to get to hear Cassi run you through something really special. So that we can address it from all the different levels and sides, so that my clients can move on to, you know, bigger and better things, to like new problems, like I said, you know.
Remember, I've been thinking about this. I think it might have been last session or the session we met before, but we are talking about, you know, the growth of everything that I've overcome and where I'm at. And I'm actually on a staircase right now, and I'm stepping up the steps, but I can't see,
right,
you know, I can't see everything that's at the next like level, but I know it's good and I know it's coming. And so like that's like really exciting for me, even just to think like about what's to come, you know, because we've worked on so much stuff in the past, and I feel really good about like where I'm stepping and how I'm moving and how I'm articulating what I want. And especially because, I mean, you'll see in this next video, like articulating and speech, that's like one of the biggest things that we've been working on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I talk about that. And so, you know, I tell people like, meet with Sheefra. She's going to help you bring in more love to yourself.
Yeah.
Where then you can connect more with God.
Amen. And I think so. Everyone who's listening, hang on here, because you're going to get to run through that practice with Cassi in the last 10 minutes of this podcast. And for our conversation, I think that's a really great note to complete this part of the conversation on is two concepts that we've been talking about a lot. One is that, you know, if we reach different levels in life, well, you can't see what's on the next platform while you're still on the third step, you know, and each step you raise your eye level up, when you walk up a step, you see a little bit more of what's above, right? And it's like that metaphor applies to a lot of different things. You see what's around the curve a little bit more as you walk down the path, whatever. It's so true. And we've been experiencing it. And the other thing we talk about a lot, which is that, you know, sometimes if things seem to quote unquote be not going your way, it could be that you've made a prayer to God for your life. of something you desire so much. And I can say for myself, I've been praying to God for my family, right? And I know it's coming because when I really made that prayer, everything to do with home for me started to shift. So I had to go all the way to Israel because it was like, oh, God's like, oh, you want this? Well, where you are right now doesn't match to the prayer that you want. So then God has to change things around for us. So sometimes we make a sincere prayer. It might be that God needs to shift our direction. And so we keep that in mind. If something, quote unquote, doesn't work out, well, what is it creating space for?
Yes. What is it creating space for?
What is it creating? So thanks everyone for listening. And I'm gonna talk to you in a little while, Cassi. And for everyone else, enjoy the practice that Cassi will now walk you through.